This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So yesterday, Chicago police off-duty officers were out in the streets protesting Tiny Dancer.
Yeah, chanting "Rom must go" and "We are CPD."
Rom must go! Rom must go! Rom must go!
And I have to tell you, I mean, you normally see police officers at protests guiding the protesters. So to see police officers, off-duty officers, marching was pretty cool. They had flags and signs.
They should have used Tiny Dancer.
Oh.
Rather than Rom. Tiny Dancer must go.
They were
That's
holding
my only quibble.
signs that said "Back the Blue" and "Blue Lives Matter." And they were protesting mostly the status of Officer Robert Rialmo. He was the officer involved in the shooting of LeGrier and Betty Jones. Remember that? Mm-hmm. But the case is now before the police board, and they want to make sure that he's treated properly.
Is this the kangaroo court that decides police misconduct allegations? Sadly, it is. COPA is a political witch hunt on police officers. The investigations are unfair and politically motivated.
So they took their protest to City Hall. They circled around City Hall and then entered the chambers.
Yeah, it seems like this is bigger than one case. They're suggesting that Civilian Police Accountability Board is a kangaroo court, so police are not being treated fairly as a matter of course. Systemic, to borrow a term from the task force report on Chicago police from a couple of years ago that found systemic racism.
Yeah, and the police union also accuses Mayor Emanuel of not having their backs, and they criticized the mayor's civilian office of police accountability, and Mayor Emanuel, a soft-toned, a tranquil Mayor Emanuel responded.
The issue of reform can be contentious. I get that. And can be loud. But it doesn't deter us from making the necessary changes, necessary investments to achieve both the public safety and the reforms we need.
Was that Tiny Dancer or Roger Goodell? I mean, I can't distinguish the two. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Kevin Graham, who's the president of the Chicago Fraternal Order of Police. Kevin, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
So your guys and ladies were out there protesting Rom yesterday, and as I suggested, it seems like it's more than about an individual case. It's about a general treatment. Am I right about that? And how are police being mistreated if I am?
Well, thank you. First of all, let's tackle Robert Rialmo. Someone came at him with a baseball bat. He was firing in self-defense. I don't think we have to wait until a police officer's head is opened up with a baseball bat in order to then make a response. Certainly, he was backing up and did what he could to protect himself. And I have said from the beginning, and I'll say it again, it is I'm very my heart goes out to the family that Betty
Jones.
She lost her life there. She was an innocent bystander, and that was unfortunate. But the reality was the officer was trying to protect himself from a man wielding a baseball bat, trying to inflict serious harm on a police officer.
So what did they do to him? They put him on administrative leave, or what's happening to him?
Well, he's going to be in a no-pay status very soon, if not already. I don't have the exact date as to when he goes into the no-pay status, but it was 30 days from the time he was served, so probably I think he has another week or so to go. The reality is that there was a number of investigations that proved he did not use excessive force. Two of those investigations were hid from the police department and the superintendent. They did it through hiring an outside law firm.
Yeah.
They hired use of force experts, and then they refused to release those documents. That's not having a fair trial. That's not being open and transparent. That's saying, look, the public wants this officer to be treated harshly, and so I think that's what the message was. And so he certainly is at a disadvantage. And so we want to make sure that when people go in front of the police board or whether they're in front of COPA, that they are treated fairly. And that's all we're asking.
Well, what has changed in the culture and the way police officers that are involved in shootings and sometimes accused of misconduct, how they are being treated since the task force report in April of 2016, since the Department of Justice report, where the Chicago Police Department was accused of being systemically racist? What's changed?
Well, first of all, I don't think that the task force was a report. I have been saying that's one person or a handful of people's manifesto. I can see the point.
No, I can see the point, but they're both political documents. The Department of Justice document was too. I mean, the things that were said in there are unbelievable. Essentially, they said, despite the fact that nearly half the police force is comprised of minorities, that there was essentially like a subtext where Chicago police officers were purposely trying to oppress minorities. I mean, those are some of the language used by Lori Lightfoot and others. So I can see the point that they're propaganda documents. My point is to say, how have those reports then influenced how police are being treated by these oversight bodies since those reports?
Well, I think they're using those as an excuse to treat police officers unfair. And I think one of the number one examples we can use is they keep talking about this code of silence. And, I've been a police officer for more than 30 years. I started in 1983. I don't know of any code of silence. Okay, neither does anybody else. And I've said this before. If somebody's telling you there's a code of silence, here's the first question you need to ask: who and when and what did you do about it when you found out? Because that seems to be, one thing that has eluded everyone. Okay, what are they talking about? Who's covering up what? And so that was something that was named in this document that they call a report. And they can't prove it. So now what they're doing is trying to treat police officers unfairly by not giving them their just dues. They're already making them defend themselves instead of proving their guilt. So the officers have to prove that they're innocent rather than there's an assumption of.
What else has changed since those reports and the big hullabaloo surrounding them? In terms, there was talk about more training. That
they're opening a new police academy.
Yeah,
that's supposed to make things all better.
Well, just generally speaking, the culture in the Chicago Police Department, how has it changed? Requirements for officers, training that officers undergo, and the like.
Well, certainly they have already started with new training for use of force, and the problem is that now they're talking about changing the use of force policy again, and you have to have a consistent policy. You can't every 6 months decide we're going to have a change and expect officers to suddenly change what they've been doing for 30 years and then change 6 months later. But one of the main tools that has been changed in the police department is we have body cameras in all 22 police districts. We have body cameras. We have GPS in the cars. We have GPS in the portable data terminals that are in there. We have GPS in our radios. Where is an officer going to go where they're not located on GPS, where they're not on camera, and all of a sudden they think that something that we're somehow deceiving the public, that we're not transparent? I don't know how much more transparent you can get. And now they're talking about a civilian oversight board where you already have a district advisory board in all 22 districts. They're wasting taxpayers' dollars, and that shouldn't occur.
Right. Mayoral race coming up. I mean, not too soon here, but in the near future.
6 months.
6 months.
8 months.
Yeah, 8 months. Yeah. So who is the FOP going to back, and is Gary McCarthy on the short list?
Gary, and I certainly don't want to. Gary McCarthy has asked for the endorsement of the Fraternal Order of Police. Okay. We have a meeting set up in June to bring in people who are asking for the endorsement, and we will make, in the Political Action Committee, will make a recommendation to the Board of Directors, and the Board of Directors at that time, the meeting following that, will make an endorsement or whatever the board decides. I mean, the board can decide that they aren't going to endorse anyone. They can wait until there are additional candidates. There's a number of options the board can do. So at this point, we haven't endorsed anyone.
Has Rom got his slot secured on that endorsement meeting?
Mayor Emanuel has not asked for the endorsement.
Interesting.
shocker.
Yeah, interesting. Lori Lightfoot, is she locked in for a time there?
For sure. Yeah.
No, she also has not asked for the endorsement.
All right.
So,
What about that like
Dorothy Brown?
4-year-old rapper or that's running for mayor? What about him?
to the best of my knowledge, he has also not asked for the endorsement of FOP.
So it's going to be like Vallis and
probably a good thing.
it's going to be like Vallis and McCarthy. All right, so you guys are going to have a lot of quality time with those two.
Well, yeah, and we don't know who else is going to come up, but certainly we are willing to listen to legitimate candidates who want the endorsement and who see the problems in the city of Chicago. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. I think it's extremely important that the citizens of the city of Chicago know that we want to keep everyone safe. We don't want people robbed on Wells Street. We don't want people shot in Inglewood, and we want to make sure that people are safe everywhere. And we want to have a dialogue to make sure that people are safe and that crime doesn't get out of control.
But is crime out of control, and it's just sort of the new normal because of this, I would say largely the civilian political leadership. You just mentioned new use of force policy. Now that's under review, maybe changes there. So you don't have any kind of stability and thus confidence in how police officers are going to be treated in the daily conduct of their jobs. I'm looking at the violent crime stats for this year as compared to last year. I mean, 190 murders in May so far this year. There were 208 last year. But we're north of 200, 250 the last 3 years. And it just seems like even if there's a little bit up one year and a little bit down the next year, that's significantly higher than the last decade leading up to the last 3 years. Has the civilian political leadership sort of lost control of this city?
Well, I'll answer that question in just one minute. I think one thing I want to make clear is that we do have a new head of COPA. We do have a new president of the police board, and I am hoping for some real change. I have a meeting scheduled to meet with the new president of the police board. I have met with the head of COPA, and the superintendent has been willing to talk to us all along. So, I do hope that there is some change on the horizon. But in reference to your question they haven't consulted with the FOP, which is, we speak for the membership of about 11,000 police officers that are active. Altogether, we have 17,000 members. And in the past, they have not consulted with us, which has led to some of the problems that you have talked about and the rising crime. We have ideas, but they think if it only comes from the civilians and it only comes from them, that it's a good idea. And that's not true.
And what about, you just mentioned essentially staffing levels, the 11,000 active members. What about that? Do we need more cops on the streets in addition to more input from cops in terms of policing strategy?
Well, yeah. First of all, in the districts, we do need more officers. You have to remember, 3 districts were closed, 2 detective areas were closed. The beats became larger. So, what used to take 4 officers is now being handled by 2. So you get into what are called RAPs, radio assignments pending. And we want to eliminate those RAPs. So we want to make sure that the staffing levels are up. And with all the new requirements that are placed upon us, when you have these long forms, when you stop someone to fill out, that takes people off the street. So now you're going to need, if you're going to increase the paperwork and take people off the street, you are going to need more police officers. So the number for the police department should be somewhere around 14,000, maybe 14,200. And that's the number at which we should probably be at. Now, we used to have what's called the .9 theory of Manning, which accounted for many variables in how to put officers in those districts. We got away from that about 8-9 years ago, and we need to get back to a formula in which we can properly staff each of the 22 districts.
That would be a big jump in personnel. There's no question. Let me ask you another question. This forthcoming Laquan McDonald trial. Well, obviously the officer involved in the Laquan McDonald shooting. How concerned are you about the repercussions for police and for, frankly, domestic tranquility in the city, depending on the outcome of that Van Dyke trial?
Well, I don't want to make too many comments specifically on the trial because it's ongoing. I want them to have a fair trial. I do think that there is a lot that has not been said. I think that when people find out all of the facts and circumstances in the case, provided they listen, that they're going to be surprised at the outcome. I do think that if Officer Van Dyke has a fair trial, I think people will see a very different picture than what they saw for 5 seconds on the evening news. Having said that, I think that if the public is willing to listen to what occurred, I think they will understand, although many people in the city have already made up their minds because they've seen a video, and to say, look, he's not guilty. I think people have a lot of questions, and certainly I am concerned that the city would be having problems. I think part of what my job is and part of what the police department's job is to make sure that people are prepared. If he is found innocent, that the citizens of the city of Chicago need to remain calm and not be upset because they feel it should have gone the other way.
Well, so based on what you know, do you think that Officer Van Dyke will be acquitted or that he should be acquitted?
I believe that from what I have heard and what I know about cameras, that I think he will be acquitted.
So do I.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
And what I know about the law. So having said those things, I can't predict how a trial is going to go or what a jury is going to do.
Sure.
Okay. I would imagine that this is going to be a very focused case by people around the country. And if he has a fair trial, I do think he's going to be acquitted. And I think it is imperative that the people of the city of Chicago get a clear message as to why he was acquitted, so that people are not upset and thinking that there is something underhanded going on or that there isn't transparency. I think that's important.
He is Kevin Graham, president of the Chicago Fraternal Order of Police. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.